Well, anyway, I do appreciate you sitting down with me because obviously this has been a lot of stuff in the media, my paper and website included. And I was at the meeting on Tuesday, obviously a fairly thorough discussion for a couple hours there. I did have additional questions, and that's why I'm glad that we could keep this meeting.
Sure.
So, starting with the CFO, it's Najon Chu, is that
Yes.
correct? When did his staff begin to review invoices related to RMC work?
Well, I don't know exactly when. I made a request of Najon to review, I made a request of the CAO through who oversees Najon's group to look at all the invoices to see if there is any inappropriate billings or if there's any inappropriate payments made.
When do you think roughly that would have happened?
Probably about a month and a half ago or so.
Okay, so about at the time that our cover story, the Reservoir God story came out? Because that was about 6 weeks ago.
You know, I'd have to see if that's somewhere around that time. Yeah, I don't know the exact date.
So it took them about a month or month and a half to do this process, or did it take the whole time, or how long did it take them to complete the
No,
review?
I would say it probably took them a few weeks to actually go through the documents and verify it. I think you saw there's about a 3-inch binder with all the invoices.
I saw a lot of binders, I wasn't
Yeah,
sure which one was what.
That's what keeps being referred to.
So it took just a few weeks then to review all of RMC's billing and say that all of the invoices matched up with payments made.
Yeah, so they looked at the invoices to make sure the invoices were appropriately documented and they were appropriately approved by the PM and that they were appropriately paid.
So the payment then is not really the issue, I guess. It's what I found interesting in the meeting on Tuesday is that people were saying the project was rushed to get a hold of federal grant money, that it was poorly designed and managed. It sounds like then it would be fair to say that maybe they were paid for their work, it's just that it wasn't good work and that maybe some of that money was wasted.
No, I don't agree. I think what we heard on Friday was that there was a Lower Silver Creek project that was moving forward under the program. And we had the 4 through 6 pretty much ready to go. There was no funding, the district's local funding ran out. So when this ERA money came about, they were looking for shovel-ready projects.
And that ERA is American Recovery Act.
Thank you. Yeah. So when it was shovel-ready, we wanted to pursue that, and we were very successful at getting that because the construction was $61 million for that project, and we were successful at about getting $54 million in both federal funding and state subvention funding. So we had to meet it within that constraint. So a $61 million project was funded primarily by federal and state dollars brought into the project.
So actually then, I think some people might assume, or just not assume, but actually based on what you just said, say that it actually wasn't district money that was wasted, it was actually federal money that was wasted because they didn't actually finish the project and it's still a year away from being completed.
No, I don't think any money was wasted in that.
Okay.
Because the project was never going to go forward. That means 3,800 parcels that are being protected would never have gotten the flood protection necessary. So from that perspective, it worked. It was a good project.
What perspective did it not work?
Well, so the questions that have been raised by the current PM is the maintenance access ramp and some sediment that's in the channel. Now, sediment accumulates in the channel all the time. We have a stream maintenance program that we put together, and we do it every year, and it goes through the various channels that accumulate sediment to remove it, so we can get the design capacity back. That happens all the time, and we have to do that work only between June, like the middle of June, and we have to be out of streams pretty much by the end of October. That's a busy season for our field crews. And in order to do that, they have to have access to these. The more access they have in ramps, the easier their job is.
Right, and so RMC was responsible for building that ramp that wasn't...
Well, RMC didn't build the ramp. The construction contractor built it.
Their subcontractor?
No. So RMC was overseeing this overall program. They had design firms that they hired, and then we go through the bidding process for construction. Okay. So that's the bid process that goes through. So you've got a number of people involved. The design firm, which designs the project, they interact with our staff to
Mhm.
make sure it's designed appropriately for what our conditions, what we want. And then it goes out to bid, and the contractor just builds it per the specs. And then we have people that oversee the construction of that. Is that clear?
Not really, yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
So
Basically, I guess, what was wrong? What went wrong?
I don't think anything went wrong.
You're saying the project was actually exactly as it was
I
supposed to be?
I think the project was built per the plans and specs, yes.
Because they ended up not doing all the tasks they were assigned to do and leaving that work for the district staff.
Well, I think the district staff provided direction to not do some particular tasks, to shift the work that they needed to get done to finish this Lower Silver Creek project, and those other tasks would be undertaken by district staff.
Who's Dennis Chion?
He's a former PM, retired.
So he was the one overseeing this work?
Correct.
Okay. There's people that say he was asleep at the wheel and that actually he was just signing invoices and not really doing a good job of checking up on the work. Is that true?
I don't know. I don't believe so. I think our staff is very dedicated and review the work and get it done.
Okay, so you don't know if he was asleep at the wheel then?
I don't believe he was.
Okay. There was nothing in the original contract, from what I know, about with RMC for Lower Silver, which, it was a not-to-exceed contract, I believe. And I want to say that there was nothing in it about inter-task transfers until amendments were made.
I don't know that level of detail. Typically, what we have, no, I haven't gone through every contract. We have over 60 capital projects, and there's a lot of contracts that go out there. There's no way I can read every one of these contracts that are, some of them are an inch thick.
Well, I guess I'm just saying because it was on the agenda, I thought you would have like gone through
I
everything.
I can tell you this, that typically in our contracts that we have, the consultant does not have the ability to move money between tasks. And the reason for that is we don't want a consultant to overbill in one task and then say, I don't have enough money to do the other task. So that's a typical standard contract language that's in there.
So what I said sounds right.
So typically that is the case. Now,
Okay.
the one who has the authority to do that is usually the project manager, who may allow for that transfer because they're the ones who understand what's going on. In many projects, there are unknowns that occur, and it can cause a shift. For example, in a design firm contract.
Well, before we go to like, just possibilities, this one contract is what I wanted to ask you about particularly, because it sounds like to me it was a not-to-exceed contract, and there was no discussion about intertask fund transfers until amendments were made to the contract. But I believe that those amendments never went to the board for approval, and that has to go to the board for approval, correct?
So, that will depend on what authorization we've received from the board.
Okay, but,
On this particular contract, there was a question in terms of the authorization that was allowed. Legal staff and project staff looked at that contract, and the authorities were appropriate per the interpretation of that contract. So what I'm saying is, all the transfers that were made and the authorizations were followed.
I guess what I'm saying is it sounds like then the intertask fund transfers are allowed by the project manager, but actually getting to that step would actually have to go to the board first before that can be amended.
So the whole contract goes to the board.
Right.
Okay, and when the whole contract goes to the board and it's out there for the public, for everybody to review, it is presented to them, and the language in that contract is essentially being approved by the board, because they give me authorization to execute the contract. Amendments, depending upon what other authorization the board has provided to us, amendments also may need to go to the board.
So in this case, did they need to?
I don't believe that. All the amendments.
You don't know for sure?
I will tell you this. I believe that all of the contract changes, amendments that went to the board were appropriately going to the board.
I guess that's where I'm a little concerned when you say "I believe."
Yeah.
At this point, you guys have had a lot of time to actually know the facts. So how come you can't say with certainty?
Because I rely on staff to look at this. And I have very good dedicated staff that are very competent. When they tell me that they've reviewed the contract and that all contract amendments were done appropriately with the board, I believe that.
Wouldn't you, Catherine
Oven.
Oven, excuse me, and Dennis Chiang have drawn up those amendments?
Probably, the project manager would have drawn the amendments, they would have then have gone through, the project manager typically would draw them up, it'd go through the deputy, it'd go through finance, it would go through legal, it would go through the chief, before it even came to me.
But it would get to you.
Eventually, yeah.
So, and so we don't know for sure then if you needed explicit direction from the board to do this.
And what I'm telling you is that the amendments were all approved appropriately within authorization provided by the board and district policy.
Okay, so we're for sure now.
I am.
Okay. A water district employee told me that you are a details guy. You're very interested in details, that you kind of like to go through things with a pretty fine tooth comb.
I've heard that, in when it's necessary.
And so what I heard was, and this is an actual quote, Beau is a micromanager by nature. For this to happen under his watch and him to not ask any questions is highly unusual. So I guess the question is, how did this happen under your watch?
Well, what happened was appropriate work under an appropriate contract that's appropriately approved.
But you have an employee, a civil engineer, who works for the water district for 18 months, has been saying that he thought that there was a gifting of public funds and that they were improperly billing the district. And his concerns have only now actually been addressed because media picked up a story.
Not accurate. When this issue...
Actually, you just said that the review of RMC just started
No.
a month ago of their invoices, but he's been for 18 months.
That's not what I said, that's not what I said.
No, you said that earlier in our interview just now. You said a month and a half ago the CFO started reviewing invoices. For 18 months, the civil engineer has been saying that he's concerned that they were improperly billing. Why the big gap?
The invoices are all reviewed by our accounting department, finance department, as the project goes along.
Mm-hmm.
An extra review was provided. The issues that were raised by the individual, as Chris Elias reported last night, those were looked into. Now, it's very difficult to find things that don't exist, right? You can spend a lot of time, but if it doesn't exist, you can't find it.
Who looked into it?
Chris Elias looked into these issues, and it was identified, and he looked in those issues, and he asked for the PM to bring these stuff in writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Chris looked into those issues.
He actually said also that lessons were learned, and so in that sense, things were not being done properly.
Well, what Chris Elias said last night
Tuesday
is,
night.
what's that saying?
It's Thursday, it's Tuesday night.
Oh, Tuesday, yeah, it's Tuesday.
It's
It's
Thursday,
been
it's
one,
fine.
it's been one day.
Okay.
So what Chris said last night was that the transfers were made. Sorry, that said Tuesday night. The transfers were made. They were approved with the proper forms. There was additional emails that, and that's not unusual, for additional emails to come in to provide some additional clarification. But the transfers that are approved were approved appropriately.
Were you ever aware about the concerns about the billing issues with RMC?
I am aware of them. It's just what.
When did you become aware of them?
Well, I don't remember exactly when I became aware of them. I will tell you this.
Was it a while back?
Well, I do know that.
Like a year ago?
Just a minute. Let me answer the question.
Sure.
I do know that we looked into our consultant contracts about, let's see, the spring, I'll call it the spring of 14.
Okay.
Okay, and the reason we looked at those is there was a contract that I became aware of that was being paid outside the expiration date.
Mm-hmm.
So then I directed all of our chiefs to look at all of their contracts and to see if there's any work that's being inappropriately billed, or contract expired, or insurance issues. They looked at the active contracts. We also looked back at about 260 contracts. We looked at all of them.
Okay.
And out of that, there was 3 that were looked into further. 2, one was corrected right away, that was the original started. The second one was very complicated because it was an insurance issue. The consultant, as I understand it, the consultant changed hands or was bought out, and we just recently got that fixed because we had to go back to the previous consultant to get insurance coverage for that period of time. The third one was the one that we're talking about. And that's when it was looked at as whether or not the authorities were, that we had executed were appropriate. That was back in 2000, I want to say, you know, I'll call it late spring, May of 2014.
Okay.
That's when a lot of these things. Now, what we found out of those 300 contracts, there's only 2 that needed to be corrected, and they were corrected. So that actually helps with the confidence that staff is managing all our consultant contracts correctly.
See, and I find that interesting because you said that happened in about May 2014.
Yeah.
And we had an interview in, I think it was your office in May of 2015. And you told me there had never been any issues with RMC contracts. You said you have not had a single instance of any problems with RMC billing. And so a year later, you actually knew about something a year before that.
But there's no problem. We looked into it, and there wasn't any problem. There was thought to be a problem, but there wasn't.
I think actually the staff said that they had to make corrections in their practices.
Not in RMC contracts.
Yeah, Chris Elias said that on Tuesday. He said
So-
lessons were learned. That was a quote.
Well, lessons are always learned.
As in things had to be corrected.
No,
Actually,
no.
I can actually remember Gary Kremen, the board chair, actually said, would you say that the work was not done appropriately? And Chris Elias said, obviously.
I think you're mixing 2 things up. Because when you actually look at the contract, the amendments, if you recall, Chris was talking about the contract amendments. That was the question that was responding to, was it done informally? Remember that conversation?
I'm sorry, which one?
So there was a question about the amendments to the contract. Were they done appropriately? And that's when Chris was talking about there was informalities that were done, and he was talking about lessons learned. So I just want to separate the two, because there's that with the contracting process and improving of the tasks. There's that piece. The second
Gary Kremen
piece,
asked.
let me finish. The second piece, I'm just trying to separate 2 issues.
Yeah.
The second one was what you brought up earlier about was it constructed correctly? That's the ramp and the sediment stuff. So I just don't want to mix up the 2 issues.
Okay. Yeah, Gary Kremen asked him, would you call it a quality issue? And Elias said, obviously. So obviously the quality was not good enough. So I guess.
Well, that's not obvious to me.
Well, it's
Like I said, the construction of the project was done consistent with the design that was bid out.
So, okay.
Okay.
We're
Well,
kind of
let's
getting, I guess we're getting a little distracted here, but the point is, you told me in May of this year that there had never been any issues with RMC, but in fact, a year prior, you actually went back and reviewed things. And I guess the question is, why wouldn't you have just told me that this May? Why didn't you just say, actually, there was an issue, but then we looked at it and it was nothing?
So what we looked at back in here I got this thing, back in March, actually it was back in February, right? We reported to the board in the June 13, 19, and now you can have this. This is the CO bulletin, where we didn't just look at, we looked at all the contracts.
No, but I guess my
We looked
question
at
is,
all the contracts.
why not just tell me that there was an issue, but it was resolved? Why say there was absolutely never anything?
Because there was nothing to resolve. I will tell you this, of all the contracts we looked at, there's a number here so I can use the right number. Out of all the contracts we looked at, it was like 290 contracts that we looked at. We looked at all of them. They were all looked at. There was a question on one. There's probably questions on the other ones that I didn't know about. But when staff looks into it, they see everything was done appropriately, everything was done correctly. And it was. There was only the 2, which are not RMC contracts, where something had to be corrected. And so when I'm talking to you a year ago, that's what I'm thinking.
No, you were talking to me just a few months ago.
Even a few months ago. Same thing.
Okay. Were you aware that there were allegations by former RMC accountants that a partner in the company allegedly tried to have them cover up illegal payments to a Monterey County Water Board member?
I did read in the paper that there's a disgruntled employee that raised that issue.
Did you have concerns about that?
That is really RMC. I suspect that there are many places where disgruntled employees are raising issues.
Raising issues of trying to cover up a crime
I will.
by a neighboring county board member?
Well, and so we have, like I told you a while ago, I have trust in the legal system to investigate and to look into the matters. That's why we have the system. I am aware that RMC has done very good work for us. They're a competent firm. They were selected many times through the process of competitive bidding, or not bidding, competitive selection.
Mhm. Okay. You said on Tuesday, there are processes in place, the level of following those processes, I don't have the detail on. I was just, this is kind of the thing that concerns me when you say, you use words like I believe and I think and those things. You had 6 weeks to prepare for that meeting, and I'm kind of curious, why didn't you know the details and information before the meeting? Why just be like, I'm kind of sure that like things kind of worked out? Why not know for a fact before you even go into that
I
meeting?
am confident, when I came into the meeting, I'm confident that all the checks and balances that we have in place worked appropriately, and the staff that are managing those checks and balances are doing their job.
See, but that, I guess, okay, I
And
guess
that's what I said, that's what I said at the meeting.
So really, it's more of just trusting staff than verifying.
Well, when you have an organization of our size, $475 million budget, we have 60 capital projects. Each one of those capital projects have many, many different contracts.
Right.
There's no way that any individuals can keep track of it. You have to make sure that the systems work and provide that protection of the public money in order to make sure that we're working fine. And we also then, we have an audit program. So we've been conducting audits for the last 6 years on different issues. As they come up, as we become aware, because audits do good things. They validate you're doing things the right way. They help you identify things that need improvement. And we look for those things because we always are continuously trying to improve the organizations. Nothing's perfect, we work in improving the things.
Okay. So you actually believe that the Lower Silver project has been a success? You used that word on Tuesday, you called it a success?
Yes.
Okay. I had one district employee tell me, quote, "It was a success in just giving away district money." What would you say to that?
I think that's a misstatement. I don't think that's appropriate to say.
Okay.
But they're entitled to their opinion.
Okay. You mentioned that Mark Klemensick was the project manager for East Side San Jose. I think you were saying that he was responsible for day-to-day operations as of 2009.
So we had a team on the, I think we refer to as the East Side Program. That's the program that got started, and it was started in order to move a lot of the flood protection projects along. Mark Clements oversaw that, and then he had a team that worked with him on that.
Okay, so he was actually overseeing day-to-day operations as of 2009 then, for Lower Silver?
I wouldn't necessarily call it day-to-day operations, because Mark was at, I believe, the chief level at that time. And then you've got teams under that really roll down the day. I don't keep track of day-to-day operations here in the organization, right? That's why you have your management team and your unit managers and your project manager in place to deal with those.
Okay, so he was responsible, but...
He was the district staff assigned to
Okay.
oversee the program.
Okay. It would seem to me that he would have probably not had as hands-on a role at that point then, right, in 2009? In Lower Silver and things like
I
that?
don't know what level of hands-on he had. That's for him to be able to manage and operate. I don't tell my managers how to do their job. I had confidence that Mark would be able to run the program, move it. In fact, he was assigned there, he had that program, I think, even before I was there. And, you know, you're going back pretty far, I remember those details.
Okay.
Then we can look, all that stuff can be, you know, looked up. It's all
You said on Tuesday, quote, "We have changed project managers and issues coming up, so now we're fixed on that." Was that Mark Clemensik you were saying, project manager?
No, you remember you raised the name of Dennis Chong. Right?
Yeah.
Dennis Chong had the project itself.
Why was his
And-
name never mentioned on Tuesday, by the way? Like, why not mention his name if he's the guy that was overseeing all of this stuff that's come into question?
Because the issue is really the processes. It's not about the individual people.
Sure. Well, the thing
So,
is, if he's...
I'm gonna answer your question.
Oh, yeah.
So we had 1 PM on the project, right?
Mhm.
And it's not unusual for a project to take many years. Flood protection projects aren't done in a couple of years. They take many years. And project managers change. Okay. So in this particular instance, Dennis Chung was a project manager moving the project. What happened then is he's selected to retire. Well, then the new project manager came into play.
Who
and-
is?
Who is Roger Narson. And my understanding is that Dennis had to leave early for family matters. And so there really wasn't the time that we would have liked to have had to hand one thing off to the other person.
Mhm.
That usually helps to avoid, you know, misunderstandings. It's nice if I'm handing something off to you for me to tell you, here's what's going, because there's a lot of details there, and there's stacks of paper that you have to read through, and that's why it's nice to have it.
So Roger Narson takes over the project. For 18 months, he's been trying to tell people that he's got concerns about improper billing. Why did it take so long to get a response?
Well, I believe that Chris Elias was doing the proper look into this. That's like I talked to you earlier.
I can tell you actually that I requested emails through Public Records Act requests, and Roger Narson's emails were actually never replied to many times. Actually, he said to Norma that we should take this to you, to Beau. Did that ever happen?
What I know happened on printed issues is that, I don't recall whether it was brought to me. I will tell you this. A lot of people talk to me in the hallways and bring things up.
Mm-hmm.
I have to rely on, again, those that are responsible for overseeing the various efforts, right? Roger could have made an appointment with me to sit in my office.
But isn't it normal to pass it up the chain?
Yeah, that's what we rely on. That's
So did
exactly what we
Norma
rely
ever
on.
pass it up to you?
I don't remember having a conversation in terms of sitting down and talking about this particular one. That she probably did raise to me that there are issues on a contract on Lower Silver, and I said, okay, well, figure it out.
Okay. In that quote, though, you said we've changed project managers and the issues coming up, so now we're fixed on that. When you say fixed, that implies that something was broken. What was not working? What was broken?
Well, I don't think it was broke. I think it was really the handoff is where I think we had some issues that need to be worked on, just like I just described to you a few minutes ago.
Okay. So
The fix would have been to have a project manager on it. The project manager needs to carry the project to completion.
okay. And the project manager would be Roger Narson we're talking about?
That's what I understand, yes.
Okay, so okay. All right.
I mean, I will tell you, you mentioned am I a detail person? Yeah, I also verify things.
Mhm.
So if I had a piece of paper that showed he was there, I'd say, yeah, I just don't have that with me. That's all.
Okay.
So these qualifiers are just for that reason, that's all.
Sure, okay. Catherine Oven, excuse me. The people who report to Catherine Oven are responsible for reviewing blueprints and inspecting pipelines for safety and those kinds of things, right?
Catherine Oven oversees our water utility capital program,
Mhm.
is what she does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, but what I said is correct then. Her
Same.
people review blueprints, inspect pipelines. People that report to her would be the kind of people that go out to Lower Silver and make sure RMC's doing the job.
She has, in her area, she has, I believe it's called our construction management unit. And what they do is when the contract gets awarded, it goes to them. So what they do is making sure that the contractor builds the project in accordance with the specifications.
Right, so.
And that group, that unit is over in Catherine's shop. That is done for both the watershed side of the work and the water utility side of the house.
Okay, so then, yeah, that's a very thorough yes then.
Yes.
Okay. So during construction of the access ramp over at Lower Silver, the people who would have seen it being built, and I say people as in people who work for the water district.
Yeah.
They would have seen it being built on pretty much almost a daily basis. And they probably should have noticed that it didn't look right, that things were not working out on the construction of the
Not
access.
necessarily. What
Well,
the construction folks would have done is looked at, what are the plans and specs saying?
Mm-hmm.
Is it being built in accordance with the plans and specs?
And it wasn't,
I haven't heard that.
but it doesn't, the access road's still, what, a year from being done,
So
and $1 million still?
So the question is, were the plans and specs developed correctly? Did it come from the design engineer?
And who would have designed it?
It's either done in-house or done through a consultant, one or
Like
the other.
RMC?
They have to sign, or RMC, I don't think did the design on this one. I believe it was
Program manager.
They just did program manager, so they're not, you have to look at the plans and specs and see who stamped it.
Okay. So how did it slip through then? How did nobody catch this? Why is it still a year and $1 million away from being completed?
Well, so what we have here is it's being constructed in accordance with the plans and specs, right? The question is, what was the review that was done during design phase? Right, so whoever the designer was, I think it was an outside firm that did the design. The interaction between them and those who are gonna use it, which would have been our operations staff.
So
and
you
maintenance
don't
staff.
know who designed the access road?
I don't have the firm's name, and I don't have the individual, we can get that, I don't have that off the top of my head. So, that's an easy gap to fill.
Yeah, well,
who
you know,
designed?
when we say details guy, I figured these are the kind of things you know.
If you have a concept of the amount of details an organization this size has.
Oh, yeah.
It's tremendous.
Mhm.
And, you know, I start at 6 in the morning, I leave 6, 7 at night. I do the best I can. You're not gonna get to know everything. I have, again, to rely on the staff that's doing it. So, am I gonna know which design firm did it, which engineer in that design firm did it? No.
No? Okay,
No.
okay.
But that information is readily available if I wanted it.
A memo to the board on April 28, 2009, requesting $2 million for lower silver said, quote, "Undertaking this work will have minimal impact on staff resources." Is that still true?
What was the date of that?
April 28, 2009.
April 28, 2009.
I mean, it seems to me if you move tasks 4 and 5, because we're 5 tasks, I believe, as it was
Yeah.
described,
Right.
and a bunch of amendments were made to task 3, which blew up from $375,000 originally to $1.7 million. And now task 4 and 5 are left for district staff. It seems to me that actually that undertaking this work has actually had a pretty substantial impact. on
If
staff.
task 4 and 5 need to be completed within a current schedule of some kind. That work, so on some projects, and some programs, what you may do is do the higher priority work, and the other work may not need to be done.
Mhm.
So I don't know what staff was thinking at that point in time, as whether that other task 4 and 5 needed to be completed or not. Would have to read through and refresh what 4 and 5 were actually about, but that's possible. And then you have to get to the word minimal. What does that
Right.
mean? Some people, minimal is an hour, some people minimal is 1,000 hours.
That doesn't sound minimal to me, but I could see that, I guess, in big scale
When you have
projects.
big programs, you know,
Sure.
80 people in your division, it can be, minimal can be a relative term.
On Tuesday, you said, "This may sound odd, but even the issues that the media has raised really test our system."
Yes.
And I think that when you actually find out, as we have looked into ourselves, you'll find the systems we have in place are solid. To me, and, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you're basically saying that the media's reporting on the district and its relationship with RMC has actually made the water district more accountable. Is that correct?
No, I don't think so. I think the district was already accountable.
Mhm.
I think what it provided was a test, so it allowed us to test our system, and they worked.
Okay. So
And we
actually,
passed.
the media has done a good thing then, actually bringing these issues to light, because now you know the system is strong.
I think that the raising the questions was good.
Mhm.
How the particular media characterized it and put the story together was not accurate, reflective of the current condition.
Okay, because, see, that was the interesting thing too, is that actually the water district has never once actually asked for a correction in any way on any of the reporting. So actually, all the facts, I guess, are actually accurate, because you guys are pretty good about demanding corrections when there's
So
mistakes.
facts can be used, but it's the order in which you put them and how you characterize them, what you select to use
Sure.
and what you select not to use. Hence the
Yeah.
purpose of videotaping.
Sure.
this.
No, I'm glad we did. I'm glad we did. And in hindsight then, do you wish you had just disclosed the fact that one of your top deputies is married to an RMC owner and some of these issues? It sounds like actually if you had just disclosed this, none of this would have happened.
Well, I think actually the appropriate work was done. The deputy, the executive, had nothing to do with the contract that was awarded to RMC. And I think that was crystal clear yesterday. It was indicated by Norma, it was indicated by Garth in terms of that process. So I think what we presented to the board was appropriate. I think the decision of the board was good. I think we were completely transparent in all of these issues. So I think we're good.
No regrets.
Nope.
Okay, great. Okay, well, that's it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Now, I do find it concerning that you have confidential documents, so if I may ask you, where did you get that?
Oh, I actually don't know. I don't know who gave it to me.
So you have a document that we don't know if it was altered or changed, because my understanding is that's a confidential document, right?
I
So
didn't know
if it
that.
is a confidential document that you've received, then that is a violation of our policy also.
Okay. Yeah, I can't really tell you, I'm sorry. By the way, can I get a copy of this recording as well, please?